to our panel this afternoon. We've got some exciting guests and a very exciting topic, engaging with the game development community. And so we're going to do quick introductions. Some of you may know me because I teach here. I'm Dr. Jeff Howard. I'm senior lecturer in game design at Falmouth University. And what I'm really excited about is our excellent panel of guests today. And we're going to start over with a familiar face. Nate, you want to introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, sure. I'm Nate Bedford. I'm a concept artist for Milky Tea Studios in Liverpool.
Wonderful.
Hi, I'm Louis Squara. I'm a character artist for Expression Games.
Hey everyone, I'm Kieran. I'm a senior environment artist at the Chinese Room.
Awesome.
Hi everyone, I'm Alex Beddows. I'm a senior environment artist at Respawn.
Yeah, I'm Jonjo Hemmens, a senior environment artist at Worksteady. Lots of environment artists.
Yeah, well, that's great. We need lots of environmental artists. That's super exciting. So you know, what this panel is sort of about is kind of providing students with helpful information on how and when to engage with communities, sort of the broader game development community. So we're going to talk about 4 topics. I'll give you a little bit of a roadmap. We're going to talk about how to find communities. We're going to talk about what platforms to look on and look for. Then we're going to talk about etiquette. So good etiquette for talking to industry professionals, bad etiquette for talking to industry professionals. So that's kind of our roadmap. And we'll just kind of do one topic at a time and just go around, maybe starting with Nate each time and kind of go in this way. And does that work for you guys?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Awesome. Okay. Well, so the first question, you know, if we're going to engage with community, we got to be able to find it. So how do we find the communities that we need to engage with as game developers? What do you think about that, Nate?
Yeah, well, just having relocated to another city, I was like looking for the game community there and still sort of established myself there. So one of the things that I did was like try to look for events and talks like a lot like this, and you know those organisations that put those on. So like things that related to the universities that are in the area, and then there's like things like meetups that happen, you know, quite regularly through those organisations. And like there's Discords, you know, Discord is usually a really good one. Yeah, and then going to those meetups and then making friends with those people. That tends to be a good rule of thumb, I think.
Awesome, very good.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, on the Discord side of things, I think that's where I've had the most success dealing with the community and meeting people. You know, there's all walks of life worldwide on Discord because it's, you know, over the internet, and you meet so many different people, but luckily that's a great thing because you can meet the people that are doing the same thing as you, maybe in the same position. Or when I was, before I was in the industry, I met people who were, you know, in industry, and you get to talk to them in a more casual setting. And that's really beneficial because, you know, it's a perspective you just don't have.
That's wonderful. What a great opportunity. What other suggestions for finding communities?
Yeah, I mean, when I was at university, I felt like I was a bit out of place because I was surrounded by people who were interested in programming and designing and stuff, and I kind of knew that I wanted to go off and do some of the art stuff. So at uni, I didn't actually have that people around me that was, you know, they weren't interested in the stuff I was interested in. So back in those days, there was a forum called Polycount that you would only really find if you typed anything in along the lines of game art or environment art, and you'd come up with like landscaping and gardening if you typed in environment art in Google. So it was a bit sort of out of the way to find, but that was a huge resource out there back in the day. It was only a few years after that Discord side of these communities and individuals were pulling developers together to form communities that we now know today. So for me back then, it was just a case of being very proactive and trying to find places where like-minded people were at. Wasn't so straightforward for me personally.
Yeah, wonderful. So yeah, proactive and community seeking, very good. What else?
Just to sort of bounce off that is it being difficult. I think like it's very hard when you're starting out. I know the first couple of years in industry for me were very difficult because when you don't know where to look, it feels like nothing exists and nothing's out there. And for a long time, you very much feel like on your own, isolated, and it is a very much uphill battle just to find a community in the first place, find somewhere you can talk. And once you find them, I mean, for me personally, I found like just going through tutorials is how I come across a lot of the communities I interact with through tutorials. But before that, it's very easy to think that there's nothing out there, and it's very easy to get quite cynical. I know I was the most cynical 19-year-old you'll ever meet. I thought that there's a lot of problems in this industry and there should be more of this sort of stuff, but it turns out they're out there. I just didn't know where to look, and I think that's the hardest thing starting out, is you just don't know where to start.
Avoiding cynicism, that's it. Yeah.
The games industry in a nutshell.
Awesome. What else, sir? What do you think?
I would say it's really important to jump on any opportunity that presents itself. We were fortunate in, I think, the second year when myself and Lou were studying.
Yeah.
We had the developers from, it's bad timing, but from Antimatter Games show up. They unfortunately closed this week, but they came in and they had modules for us, and they basically would give us feedback on our work, and that was the first kind of opportunity that we had as students to talk to people in the games industry and get like actual feedback from them. And the relationships that I built there, I mean, I got to know a producer there who went on to work at Rocksteady and kind of recommended me for that job there. So through that connection that I made at uni, we didn't talk for years, but kind of came back around and helped me find a job after I spent a year somewhere else. So just really, if an opportunity presents itself from your university studies, yeah, jump on it.
So a lot of these connections could really be long-term kind of friendships over a long period of time.
Yeah, if you've developed a strong relationship with someone, I can imagine that lasting your whole career if you both stay in the same field. Yeah.
Wonderful. Really, really good. It's interesting, as we've talked about communities, the issue of platforms has come up somewhat naturally because so much of the networking seems to be sort of online. But maybe we could just sort of quickly circle back and see if we were thinking, in particular about kind of online platforms. Whether there's anything you would add. In some cases, it may be the same, but let's just check. Well, let's kind of see. So we've covered that base. Nate, what do you think? In terms of kind of platforms to look on if you're searching for game development communities.
Well, I think, like as we've sort of all pointed out, like Discord is like one of the
It's huge.
the really big ones. Because you can have quite a big community, but it also feels very personal.
Sure.
You can have conversations with individuals, but you can also just engage with like massive conversations that are going on, and it's kind of set up for that. It's kind of finding those discords and getting into those discords is another thing entirely, because there's plenty of discords that I'm part of that are like just some that I don't engage with whatsoever, but I'm got a, as we all have, massive list on the left hand side of the screen. So I think like what I found was like kind of going back to what I was saying, but like I looked on like Eventbrite. I was looking at like kind of events that were happening, and there's nothing like being in person a lot of the time, I think, and like engaging with people on a one-to-one basis. But then through that, sort of found the platforms in which to engage with that community through like those meetups and events.
So the in-person meetings could maybe get you into a secret Discord or a less available Discord or something like that.
Yeah, those secret Discords. I don't know whether they're secret, but like, you just don't want every single guy on his dump.
Definitely something that does happen with the Discord communities is that they can tend to be really big. I think one that I met Alex and Kieran in is got thousands of members in the Dynasty Empires. It's a massive Discord community, and it can get very overwhelming. But what we've seen happen in these places that often people who are quite like-minded will often like group together and then branch off and kind of create their own smaller space where they can give more like tailored feedback and critique, and that's where you develop those kind of closer, more intimate like business and work relationships.
Excellent. So there's almost layers to the networking process there.
Yeah, many layers.
I would also say with that, because you can get this kind of cliquiness with bigger groups forming smaller groups. Maybe it feels a bit secretive, like, oh, those guys are over there, those guys are over there. One way I would say is if, especially group setting isn't for everyone.
Sure.
A lot of people get intimidated with group topics like this, conversations go back and forth. The one-to-one stuff can be just as valuable, if not more valuable, because you do have that personalized one-to-one sort of conversation. It's much more familiar. So even platforms like LinkedIn or Twitter, if you can have that one-to-one engagement and you're an individual that actually is much more comfortable doing that, then I would recommend going off. If you have a certain artist that inspires your work, or you're working on something that you're passionate about, and you want to try a different technique that someone's worked on, you're not quite sure how they've gone about doing that, sending them a familiar message saying, hey, like, I really like your work. Would you just be able to break down this for me, or be genuinely curious and poke questions in into their work. You can start building these connections that actually down the road might lead you to job opportunities. And it's not necessarily this whole cliquey thing, but more rather lots of individuals, like-minded individuals, connecting in loads of different ways. And what you might find is that you took feedback from one guy, but that guy knows that guy. Those two worked together back in the day.
Yeah.
He taught at this uni. He knows her, and you know her, and like what you'll find is this web of people. So yeah,
the industry is very small.
Very small.
Yeah, very, very.
Wow, a web of people. What a wonderful kind of image to think about. And I mean, it feels like these platforms are changing so quickly, right? I mean, because Twitter is there and big one day, and then suddenly it's bought by someone else, and maybe it's less big or something like that. How do you keep abreast of that in terms of platforms? How do you kind of keep up with that?
I think it's the same way. You just keep your ground over here, see what other people are using and mimic.
Yeah.
I mean, emails are always working.
Sure.
And following on from what you said, I met my mentor Paul Wadowski as a senior character artist at Splash Damage, just because I sent him an email.
Whoa.
And I said, I really loved your work. I'd love to mentor under you. And he said, yeah, and it was like his first. And it was purely because it was just a nice, cordial email. And I think that's a solid way. If you can show that decorum, and also I think if you email someone directly, always expect them not to reply.
Sure.
It's their time, generally their free time.
Absolutely.
Show that respect.
One thing to mention as well with communities and interacting with them in general. So I've spent a lot of time in communities. I spent most of my career doing as many as I can, because it's in the early days when you get into one community, each community has different personalities, different characters, different voices, and the loudest voices always come to the top.
Yeah.
And one thing you'll find is you might join one community and think, this is terrible, these people are awful, and they're not your type of people.
Sure.
And then again, you easy to be cynical and you go, oh, well, this ain't for me. And there's something like this. I have my usual community I hang out in, and I talk to people in, and I met a lot of my dearest friends in. But it helps to spend time and experience other Discord. I think on my Discord list I've got probably 15 different environmental Discords. And it's good every now and then just to gut check, hang out, meet new people, hear different perspectives. It's very easy to get yourself in an echo chamber. Oh, these people I really like, and they're really comfortable around them, and they're really good artists and they're helping me. They also will share the exact same opinion.
Sure.
And it can be very easy to misconstrue their opinion as the industry's opinion. So I think with communities are incredibly powerful, but there's an element of be aware that every community has a personality and viewpoints and ways of doing things and ways of communicating. Because I will tell you from experience now, there are some communities that if you adopt the way they interact with each other, you're not going to last long in the industry. And there are some communities out there that if you adopt the way they interact with each other, you'll go far. Because there's a level of professionalism, there's levels of courtesy and authenticity that comes along. And I think this is something that caught me off guard. It wasn't this isn't like this is a thing I figured out with day one. Like I was already in the industry doing perfectly fine until I started hanging out in a couple of other Discords and realizing these people have wildly different views to me, are wildly different people who I would never normally on a day-to-day basis interact with, and you learn a lot about yourself and them, and it just helps you just get a broader read on the industry as a whole. And I think that's something that's sometimes overlooked when we talk about Discord communities mainly, because that's the one which is most common.
It's important to equate as well that people who post good art or just even good work in general might not necessarily present the best social skills or social habits. Some communities with some of the best talent that I've seen might also be very memey and unprofessional.
Okay.
And it's important to distance those two things and remember you still need to be a professional if you want to, engage with other professionals.
Wonderful. I feel like we may be sort of naturally transitioning into the good etiquette, bad etiquette discussion in a little bit. Before we move there, is there anything else we should say about platforms? I think it seems like we've explored it maybe.
I'd just add that LinkedIn is a fantastic place for job finding.
Yeah.
That's just the best place for it. Just for a broad industry sweep, it's really, really good for it. There's so many recruiters on there headhunting. It's a very important platform to get a large kind of connection on if you want to just have opportunities come your way. That's probably the best place, I'd say, for just job finding.
Interesting point about that was my current job at the Chinese Room. I only found out about the job role was because the principal artist at the time posted on LinkedIn saying, hey, we have a role open, just opening up to my network just in case. Like, I don't think he had a particularly high expectations to catch people from that. But
Sure.
I happened to see that post, and I reached out to him and said, hey, like, I'm currently looking for work.
Yeah.
The interesting part about that is, though, I had already connected with him before in the Discords. I'd already spoken to him and already made that sort of relationship.
Fascinating.
So it was that kind of like two-pronged thing of like, oh, we already kind of know each other, but there's a job opportunity that you posted over here. So it's kind of like this mishmashing of platforms together, but on top of, you know, a professional connection and relationship. And that's how I ended up getting that job. And what you'll find is that is, you know, the further you get into your career, you'll find that, oh, I really want to work with that guy. I know he's a solid guy. If we're in the trenches and production's on fire, I can rely on that guy.
Wow.
That's exactly
all
what
that.
happened with me at Expression. Is my buddy Jake got work there, and he said, "Do you know any other great character artists?" And yeah, just my foot in the door, and immediately, yeah, they want to be from that. So you know, just build those relationships, and they really do open doors.
That's almost more important than focusing on the platform itself.
Sure.
I do think there's like, there'll be some people who are really into Discord, some people who are really not into Discord. So I
Yeah.
would say don't necessarily get hung up on how you connect with people, but connecting with people in general, building those connections, building your social skills, getting more experience doing that, and you know, putting the feelers out, and yeah, just.
This is going into the bad etiquette thing with communities.
Sure.
It's something that happens a lot, which is be very, very, very aware of how you portray yourself. So for example, some great artists I know will have, and we briefly mentioned with the whole being, you know, meme online or whatever, or you know, sarcasm doesn't read great over Discord, and some people might not appreciate blunt or sarcastic feedback, or you might give unsolicited feedback, or you might be a bit rude, and you don't think you are. I've definitely been guilty of this, sometimes giving feedback which is unsolicited and the person very much didn't want it. And little interactions like that get remembered, and you've got to remember, especially with Twitter, which has a bigger timeline of exactly all of your interactions, how you conduct yourself on these communities and social media, they matter. Like, I think most professionals in our industry are very careful with their Twitter, in a sense of I pretty much only post artwork, you know, hobbies which are linked or adjacent, you know, whatever, photography or whatever, some stuff like that. And it's only now where like I'm starting to get further into my career, where it's starting to show a bit more of my life, but I think it's very easy for people to share inappropriate memes or jokes which aren't. Would you tell that in the middle of a meeting at an office? No. Okay, maybe it doesn't belong in professional Twitter. Are you going to make that joke in a meeting with your lead? No. Then maybe it doesn't belong in a professional Discord.
That is one of the sacrifices you kind of do
Yes.
make going into the industry, is that anything that your name is attached to is going to, in a soft way, represent where you want to work.
Yeah.
And you do need to be kind of careful about how you conduct yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no one wants to hire someone with extreme political views.
Sure.
It's just scary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's also a reflection of who you are as a person. Like, not necessarily that if your views are good or bad.
Yeah.
It's not about that. It's about when you think it's appropriate to discuss these things.
Cool.
Your work meeting is not the appropriate time to discuss certain topics.
Right.
If you're willing to do that in a professional Discord, you know, my head as a recruiter or as someone hiring, is this person going to do this in the middle of a meeting?
Sure.
And just even the fact that I have to ask that question, probably a no. It's probably a no, you wouldn't do that. I like to assume it's always a no.
Right.
But the fact that that's in my head, it's like, okay, that's one mark against your name in what is already a very competitive industry.
Absolutely. So we've got avoiding unprofessional memes in terms of sort of bad etiquette. We've also got, you know, avoiding extreme expressions of sort of extreme political.
Well, just recognizing that what you post online is going to represent you
Good.
in many ways.
Good.
And, yeah, your online presence should be what you want to achieve in a professional space.
Excellent.
And not that it would be inherently wrong to hold those views, but
Sure.
they
No, not
may
at
not
all.
align with what the recruiter
Absolutely.
believes,
Yeah.
and that may affect the decision to hire you, which may be
If you
difficult.
hold a different view to someone and it's a heated topic,
Yeah.
they're probably really going to remember that you don't have a shared opinion.
Right.
But even if you share an opinion with someone, even on something heated, they will probably forget about that very quickly.
Yeah.
People will quickly latch onto stuff where you disagree more than where you agree.
Fascinating.
And that can be really damaging if you share too much.
No, very well said. So, in terms of kind of, I guess we've got good etiquette and bad etiquette. We're kind of thinking about do's and don'ts in relationship to engaging with community. Can we think of other kind of things that we would want to avoid doing? I guess we can start with don'ts. What should we avoid doing in terms of engaging?
I think you brought up critique, and honestly, that's one of the, as an artist, I think, or any discipline, critique from peers is one of the best ways to improve. But learning how to give it and take it, that's one of the great things about online communities is you can do that. But like you said, you should ask if someone wants feedback, because they're always going to be more receptive if you ask first and they say yes. And then, like you said about the bluntness, I think, if someone's work and they put hundreds of hours into something, it could be very precious to them, and it could really upset them if you approach it the wrong way, or you just, unless you're really close with them and you understand that they take it differently than other people. But
it's very easy to tear apart someone's 100 hours of work into something with just a paragraph. And you really do need to be careful about how you approach that critique. Yeah,
because you always, I think ultimately everyone wants to see their work received really well. And feedback is even the time for that, the compliment sandwich, where you start with something good, you put all the feedback and the improvements in the middle, and then you end, with really good effort. Keep it up. I want to see more of this, and just encourage them, because at the end of the day, that's what you want, and you want more people doing really well. That's the main aim.
Absolutely. So compliment sandwiches and being careful with feedback, that's really good.
Yeah.
What are some other, maybe we could think about sort of good etiquette for a second. So I think that's good etiquette. Like, what are some other good examples of positive ways to engage?
Learn how to, sorry,
no, you go. Yeah.
I'd say learn to ask for feedback. It's just to jump off your point. There is nothing worse than having a student or an artist approach me and say, hey, can you just review my portfolio? Every time I'm like, you're going to have to be more specific, because review my portfolio could mean a million different things depending on where you want to go. You could have a load of stylized work on your portfolio and I review it from a stylized perspective. Oh no, I want to work at Dice. Okay, well that's completely changed the context of how I look at your portfolio. And I know I've interacted with artists when I was starting out. Tim Simpson, a really renowned Ubisoft lighting artist at the time, I reached out to him and my question was, hey, I want to work at Ubisoft one day. Could you look at my portfolio and see what's missing that you might think a Ubisoft studio would want to have? And I've still got the ArtStation message, because later on, Tim's who hired me to work at Counterplay, and he remembered me from that message, and there's like the podcast and stuff like that. But look, that response, I got a very detailed response back from him. And Tim's a busy guy. Every artist in this industry is probably quite busy. Learning how to actually ask a question and get the answer you need is very important, because it's very easy to copy and paste. Hey, could you review my portfolio?
And you can tell too.
Oh, it's so
obvious. There have been times where I think me and Kieran have been like hanging out talking throughout the day, because we chat on Discord a fair bit, where we've been like, oh, I've got a message. Oh, it's asking for a portfolio review. And we've received the identical message from the same person. And then I might, talk to Jason later and he's like, oh, I got a message today.
Yep.
And people are just spamming the same message out, changing the name and maybe the studio, and it's very obvious. It's not personalized at all to the artist, and you feel like you're just being used.
Yes, well, it's like the amount of effort you've put in to copy and paste that message, to search my name and copy and paste. Well, that's the amount of effort you're going to get back to me when I say, hey, you'll be more detailed. That's, it's quid pro quo. You can't just put as minimal effort as you possibly can and expect artists who are busy to put detailed responses, analyze your portfolio and give you a good response.
It's important to talk to people in the community like they're humans as well. Because when you send a message just saying, your first message has a line of, can you review my portfolio? It's very like, you're asking a lot. A portfolio review it's an intimate thing that is going to take someone's time and attention. And if I don't know you, or your question, or you've not really given anything forward, or if there isn't a respect for what I do or my work, I might be a little bit hard to get around to doing that. If I know that I think this happened recently, someone had followed me on ArtStation and immediately sent me a message asking for a review. And I thought, no, you don't really care about my artwork, you've just got here, you've just seen that I'm on this platform. You're not really that engaged in what I do, so I'm probably not going to be the best for you. But there have been, I think both me and Kieran worked with Santiago, an environment artist who reached out to both of us for feedback, very personalized. And I think over working with him for a year and a half, he went to High Noon in California.
High Noon, yeah.
Yeah, and he's done really well for himself.
Really talented guy, great attitude towards learning, took the feedback on really positively and with open arms. And it's paid off for him, because he's, paving a way for himself in the industry. There's little connections like that and little endorsements that you'll pick up along the way, and all of a sudden you're finding doors are being opened before you even get there because your name has gone around in a really positive way. And you know, hiring you is a pleasure, and people want to work with you because they know, he's not just going to ask for something before getting it. You know, I think there's a level of small talk and a level of foreplay, conversationally speaking, that is appreciated when it comes to these kind of things. No one ever wants to feel used.
Sure.
So
It's those soft skills where you're sort of like, you know, everyone wants to be a really good artist, but that people forget about, you know, interacting with people who you've just met and like treating, as you say, treating them like human beings and not some like foothold that you can jump into your career.
Yeah.
So I would just get used to like approaching people who you don't know and sort of talking to people, and you know, whether that be online or offline, and just, you know, being a likable person when you first meet someone. And it's not, you don't have to be industry professionals to, you know, get outside of your, you know, 3-person friend group, whatever. And then when you do go to those events, or you're on Discord or you're whatever, you can talk to people like they're actual human beings and have those social skills already set up. So you don't have to worry about how am I coming across, because you've already done the work outside of it.
Wow.
what I would say with the Discords as well, the communities that are around these days, is one of the best things is that you are able to give feedback and be a part of someone else's learning process and journey. And I often think almost like brownie points that you're giving out, because one day you may need the feedback. You may be the person who needs that critical eye or needs a bit of feedback. And it's almost as if you've, by giving, as opposed to taking first, by giving feedback to 2, 3, 4 different people, it's almost like you're putting good karma out there. One day you'll need the feedback when you put your stuff in there. Someone who's taken feedback from you in the past and you've been a part of their thing, they're like, oh yeah, I remember John and he's working on Sword. Yeah, I'll give him some feedback. And that, again, it's just that building of good connections. And what I hate about networking is that that phrase is just so formal. It feels like sending out connections on LinkedIn and coming to events and wearing suits and stuff you actually don't feel comfortable in. And pretending to be this person you're not, when actually networking is exactly this stuff. It's, you know, being involved in communities, it's just taking criticism well, it's approaching people in the right way, and all of a sudden after doing that for 10, 20 years, you've got a solid group of people that you can rely on if you are in a pinch for a job, or you know, you want to move disciplines or something. That gets way easier when you've done these things right from the get-go.
I found that you build off a foundation of giving more than receiving.
Exactly.
You need to give more in these communities and put that kind of groundwork in with people before you can expect to receive things in return. Giving is the most important thing. Going in not thinking this is just for me, but finding like-minded individuals that you can help climb up with is definitely the most important thing.
You also find it very fulfilling doing that yourself. When you've seen someone start from a very rudimentary place and grow into really exceptional
take the
artists.
selfish, if you're using the exact same thing, use the selfish framework like me, which is, okay, if I'm not going to give, fine, it will level you up as well as a person, as an artist. Like learning to give feedback and actually look at a piece of work and not just go, oh, that's good or that's bad. Being able to look at it, you actually level up as a person.
I mean, we're just talking about artwork here, but this kind of applies to all
everything,
game development.
Absolutely, and it also, just one other point about that as well is you can, the whole networking thing and building connections. I had a job at Live 5 where my CEO would always just, and it's to the point where I wanted to hit him, would keep saying relationships, it's just relationships. And every time I got frustrated with a client, or I got frustrated with one of my peers, Alex, it's just relationships. And I used to, I'm not joking, want to hurt him. And to this day, he was so right. Like, everyone you're meeting, you are developing human relationships with. Like, it's so easy to be transactional, and I'm going to talk to you because you're going to give me the thing, and I'm going to give you a service in return. And I was like this. You can become a very one-dimensional person. And then I've noticed even just, you know, speaking to HR people, if it's in interviews, just learning to speak to them first as a human and as a person, and develop a relationship before we get down to business of salaries, job, expectations, promotions. Being able to have a personal connection with someone, it is just developing relationships. And I remember I've given a talk before where I've crossed out the word networking and just put build relationships. And if you go with that mindset and remove the transactionality from it, it's so much better. I think you'll have a much better experience in yourself, and you'll enjoy the process a lot more than being like, oh, I couldn't get the thing from that person. Well, that's annoying. Well, this sucks. Rather than being like, hey, I spoke to one of my good friends now, Ben Wilson. Hey, I got to speak to Ben. He's a really good artist, and he's actually quite a nice guy, and he plays League of Legends, and I get to play League of Legends with him now. And 6 months down the line, he might give me a cool lesson on making materials. But it started with making a genuine friendship. And it seems quite like, probably romanticizing it a little bit, but I think I have had far better outcomes from going in with that mindset than going in with I need to get something out of this person kind of thing.
I think that's where Discord definitely facilitates that more informal interaction much better. LinkedIn is very formal and it's hard to get like a, hey, do you want to be friends?
Yeah.
Like, should we like hang out and get to know each other on LinkedIn?
Yeah.
No, it just doesn't work.
No.
But Discord's is a lot better for it.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So this is such a good discussion, and I kind of hate to move to the next phase of things, but I know we've got some questions from our audience. It's probably time. We got like 15 minutes at this point. So it's probably time to kind of shift into Q&A. And so what I'll do is maybe if you've got a question, you can kind of raise your hand, and then you can kind of say it, and then I'll repeat it through the microphone, so that way everybody can hear it, if that works. Okay, so any questions? Anybody have something they want to ask our panel? All right, so Emily.
Question for Nate, how are you finding like the Liverpool game dev scene specifically? Because like I'm from there, I know there's Milky Tea, Fire Sprite, and Lucid, and I know they've got like a football league going on. How are you like finding it?
Okay, so I got to repeat that one for posterity. Emily has asked, how, Nate, are you finding the Liverpool game development scene?
Yeah, I mean, I've done like a couple of meetups, as I say, and sort of, I kept like, we keep
Yeah,
saying
I know,
we're
we're
gonna meet up
so
and,
too busy.
we're going to play Warhammer together at some point.
Yeah.
But like, and I ran into Ben, who he works for 1010, and he was like, oh yeah, Milky Tea beat us at the football league really recently, but I wasn't there. Like the idea of playing football instead of drawing didn't really feel like a thing that I wanted to do. Like when I was at school, I didn't do that, so why would I do that now? But overall, everybody's like really nice. It's like it's a lovely city, and hopefully going to start doing a bit of a drink and draw art meet like pretty soon up there as well.
That's wonderful, really good. What other questions, Esther?
What would you guys have to say to somebody who, because of a disability, is limited in the ways that they can interact with people?
Okay, so for posterity, what would the panel have to say about somebody who's trying to network but might be limited in the ways they can interact with people based on a disability or a different ability? What do we think on that?
I would say, what's your favourite way of interacting with people? Is it face-to-face? Is it in groups? Is it over Teams chat or something? Like, I would recommend first going inward and understanding how you best communicate, how you like to talk to people, and then pursue those mediums that are more suited to that. For example, I don't mind group chats and stuff like that, but I'm much better one-to-one. I don't know why, but it feels better to me. Conversation flows better. No one's interrupting each other. So yeah, whether it's just like a private DM or a one-to-one voice call, I personally prefer that because it suits my personality a little bit better. So if that was something that you were better at doing in person, then maybe that's the way to go. Maybe it is reaching out to people one-to-one that you look up to or are inspired by and connecting with them, making connections that way. If it is the group stuff, then Discord's a great place to start. Even if it's just on text, like you don't have to be in these voice channels. That can be super intimidating. Actually, there's thousands of people in there, and they can all see your name.
They
and
scare
stuff.
me.
I think lurking is like totally fine.
Yeah.
Like lurking on the Discord is absolutely fine because you're going to absorb all of the information of people just talking. You don't necessarily need to interact, but just have an eye of what's going on, see how people give feedback, how people are improving. You don't necessarily need to be actively engaging with people in a Discord because it is just going and rolling regardless.
There's a level of pacificity to it. So like, if you're in a space where people are learning and growing and giving feedback and stuff, you just being in that environment is going to be so beneficial for you picking up your own skills because you'll see 2 or 3 people critiquing one environment. You'll get to understand what they understand and you get where they're getting from and you, by not even doing anything, but by being in that environment, being proxy to it, you pick up certain things that you may not have thought about before.
You can learn from positive interactions and negative
And
interactions
negative
because
ones.
they can happen all over the place. Like good bits of feedback where someone's actually grown and learned from something, or someone taking something the wrong way and an argument can take place.
Yeah.
You know, these communities aren't always, you know, the perfect places for people to engage. There's sometimes, you know, people clash on decisions or say that this person's critique isn't as valid as my critique.
Yeah.
And you can learn from these things and, you know, you don't have to always engage, you know, actively to learn from it.
Wonderful. All right, so really good answers. Do we have other questions? What about you, sir?
In the discussion on communities, specifically on Discord, how would you find these communities outside of invitation?
I just, when I graduated, and I did this way too late, but end of third year, I just Googled Environment Art Discord, and that came up, and then he was sat in the chat.
We all met in the same Discord. Is that we all met via the dynasty. So, for example, you found it through Googling.
Yeah.
I was Googling. I saw YouTube searching how to do edge decals in Unreal Engine, and Jeremy Estrelado video came up with him streaming him
And he
doing
owns the
it.
Discord.
And he owns the Discord. And I was like, oh, cool. I'll like watch his video, and I'm watching for a couple of hours and looking in the description. I'm like, there's a Discord. Okay, fine. I'll check it out. And that's how I found it. Like,
Yeah, a lot of people will promote their Discords on YouTube, Twitter, like the game dev personalities for different things. So if you're a programmer, I guarantee you there'll be programming game Discords out there. Or even for design, like the Design Den. That's a
Twitch
really popular
streams.
one.
Twitch streams are going to be the best place to look at. Anyone who Twitch streams definitely has a Discord to go side by
Promote
side.
their
with.
community.
Yeah.
Even if you have to be super proactive, like I don't know where you learned, but I did loads of my learning on YouTube. Even if it's a case of checking out like a Tim Simpson video, for example, Unreal, whatever. Click on that, scroll through the comments, see who's commenting, click on their profiles, see their art station, DM them. You're now in a Discord.
Yeah.
Right? Sometimes you do have to do that treasure hunt to find these places, but more often than not, it's a case of like a simple Google of our character art Discord or something mentorship, and that comes up, and maybe it's a scheme where there is a mentorship thing going on, and then on the side they've got some sort of learning system. May not be Discord, maybe some other system. But
And once you're in a Discord, you know, likelihood is a person in there is in a different Discord, and you're like, oh, I'm into this. Oh, you should be. Why are you not in this?
This is a better place for you.
Yeah. And often that's, you know, we go back to the cliques. That's kind of how they form. But like, there's also the advantage of that, where it is more specific to you. And that's more helpful.
It's not being scared as well to like if it's not there, then like building a community as well. Like it doesn't like people feel like it, you know, something has to be ready made, that you go and you're sort of like, oh, here's everybody that I'm looking for. But like sometimes you have to be proactive in the sense of trying to get all those people that are all looking for somewhere to go and getting them together and sort of building something yourself. So
Yeah, you could be the first. So you never know.
Wonderful. And just for posterity or the recording, those answers were in response to the question, how do you find some of these communities, specifically the Discords, if they might be kind of hidden? So great question, great answers. Any kind of remaining questions? Rory?
Yeah. Do you have any, perhaps know any examples of, let's say, communities on Discord or any other systems originally having a different purpose, of course, and then developing into an actual team? Like they start, like teams, of course, develop on these Discords, and then they start actually using the Discord to further develop the community in a direction, further leading them to perhaps develop their own company as a result.
Okay, so for posterity, Rory's excellent question would be, do you have any examples of communities, specifically kind of Discord servers, that have begun as communities and then later become full-fledged teams?
I can only think of one, and that would be Experience Points.
yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Experience Points were a very similar one to the Dynasty Empire, which is where we all met.
Specifically focused on environment.
Yeah, environment art, and essentially it started out as they did a couple of challenges, community challenges, and then that became setting up mentorship schemes, and then setting up like store asset packs on the store, and that was all born from, originally they were a article website. They would make articles, like if you've heard of 80 Level, they would make similar things for environment art. Started off as an article website. They made a community on Discord. They had a podcast. They went through the repertoire of everything they need, YouTube videos, selling tutorials, and actually did very well. Their tutorial side of things, they grew quite a big crowd through their Discords and their YouTube videos and their podcasts, and people were going to their websites for learning content. They naturally sidestepped into, okay, let's produce actual tutorials. We'll pay people to make tutorials. I've made a tutorial for them before, and then that's a way they've managed to sort of monopolize that community. It's the only one I can think of off the top of my head, though.
And even then, it's not really a like game studio. It's they just produce content for artists.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen a Discord community grow into like something that develops a game.
No.
That's an extremely kind of complex thing to do, and often games don't come from nothing. They come from like a pretty heavy intent to we want to go into this to make a game and make an experience, rather than
It's not whimsical.
a bunch of people being like, oh yeah, you know what, we should like hanging out, let's make a game. Because also it's really hard to get that many disciplines in the same space as well, especially in Discord where they do get a bit more nichey. Like a bunch of environment artists cannot make a game together. They can make an environment together, and that's about it.
Barely.
After a lot of fighting.
Yeah, a lot of fighting. Yeah.
So, but still a fascinating scenario that Rory asked about, so it's cool. So now we have like 3 minutes left at this point. So maybe time for one more question if somebody's got one. Okay, oh my gosh, now we have 2 questions. Okay, how about you, sir?
You mentioned the community challenges on things like Discords. Do you reckon that's like a good way just to start producing some content and well, make a portfolio?
So are community challenges on Discord a good way to start making portfolio content?
Yeah, I definitely agree. The ArtStation challenges have a huge amount of visibility. If you enter one, normally the judges are industry professionals. If you're working actively, the people in the challenges view each other's work. Feedback arises from that. I think Kiosk Masons, which is a Discord from a business, they run challenges inside that Discord. And then they make hires from that. If you get number 1 on that, they're going to be looking for you. That's more character art related, but they're a massive outsource company, so they're all looking for loads of different people.
They also stimulate feedback because you've got 20 or 30 people all working on the same challenge. That gets everyone in the mind space of trying to think like, oh, I see that they've done this thing differently. I should give them feedback because they're already considering a lot of that in their head. Yeah, it's a really great kind of like melting pot of just ideas.
And if you struggle with setting deadlines, a challenge deadline, perfect, because you know what you're working towards, you know how much time you have. I think one of the issues with personal work is it can go on forever because you're never really setting yourself a proper deadline because you want it to be the best thing possible, and that way is give it more time, but there's always more time. Where a challenge is this date, I need to do all these things now.
From a recruiting perspective as well, there's very few, it's similar to an art test, right? An art test is a timed piece of art. I know what you can produce in X amount of time. The community challenge is the exact same. Like you get to set yourself a deadline, but also me as the recruiter gets to look at this piece, and I get a very honest representation of you as an artist. Like because there are some portfolio pieces that, like I said, they can take years to make. But I see what you can do in 3-4 months, and I get a very good representation.
Our recent character artist hires were both grads and games people. They both did that, and it was a real clear identifier to us when we're hiring. But okay. That's where they're at. This is the amount of time they had. It's perfect.
When I was before I got into Milky Tea, one of the things that I did was doing one of the monthly art challenges. We did the March of the Robots. So that showed like what I could do in like 1 to 3 hours a day and be consistent about it. And that's like the thing that they saw and was like, we would like to ask you to come in for an interview. So even if it even outside of those communities, like I know, obviously it's better if you have that feedback and you're sort of doing the back and forth, but like if you want to just focus in on doing very small projects, like on a daily over a month, that's something to do as well.
Also, don't be afraid to look outside of your own discipline to find inspiration, find people and find challenges. So for example, Nate, with environment art, for example, and I know ArtStation do structure their challenges specifically like this. They will split the competition into 2 phases. You'll have a concepting phase where guys like Nate will come in, they'll have their own sort of competition going on. They produce those final concepts. And then you'll have the environment artists, maybe character artists, VFX come in and take those initial concepts to then realize those into 3D, and you have your own competition and challenge. So it might require you to look outside of what you're necessarily, doing. In order to find these competitions and also just network as well.
And it also shows you can work with those people.
Exactly, it's always a relationship within these productions. Like you will get to know your concept artist at work. You'll get to know the VFX guy. You'll get to know the level designer because you're all working on the same thing. And again, it's like coming back to the networking thing. you're just how good are your relationships? Because maybe you do need some things changing from the concept, or we can't make this into 3D. Level designer on my ass because it needs to be metric. Can you concept this? Just like give me like a quick paint over so that I can work that into 3D. Level designer's happy. VFX can come in. Audio are in, and then
This is speaking from like experience. You can see there's a passion there.
again, like, yeah, production's just chaos. So the more transparent you can be, the more challenges you overcome in a way.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, I think we're really very close to the end of our time. Yeah, we're out of time. Okay, well, thank you so much for an excellent panel, guys. We really, really appreciate your help. Maybe a round of applause for our